Hey everybody, it's Joel Toppin here, and I've got the Pendragon VASSAL module just about ready to go. I think I have maybe just a couple small bugs to solve, and then I'll do the setups, and then we'll get this going for you. But I thought I'd shoot a couple videos, or at least one video, and walk you through how to use the VASSAL module, because there are a few things in this module that are a little different than previous coin modules. So there's not as much automation in this module. There's plenty of bells and whistles, but the game is far more complex than other coin games, and as such, um, there were some certain things that I just could not invest any more time in trying to figure out how to automate when they can be done manually just fine. So if you're smart enough to play this game, then you're smart enough to handle some of the things that I could not automate. So let's put it that way. Here's how the game works. The left-hand side of the display here, I've zoomed all the way out so you can see the entire width of the playing surface. The far left-hand side is where you can put cards that have either the pivotal events. There's no rule enforcement with pivotal events. It's up to you to remember whether a card is playable. There's no rule enforcement with these, but if you want to mark a card as not being playable just yet, like the Duke's pivotal event, for example, play a 5 prestige and no Roman rule. Well, it doesn't exist at the start here, so maybe I want to just right-click on it and choose to flip this card face down to demonstrate that it's not currently playable. That's something that you can do as a mnemonic, but it's up to you to keep track of that stuff as the user. The module's not going to do that for you. Cards that have an enduring momentum or capability effect can also be sent here, positioned here, and there's zones for cards that impact, where their continuous impact is more specific to that player, and you can put them there, but there's no real requirement that you do so. I just put that in as a convenience, and then there's just some plain white space down here for you to stow cards that have an enduring effect. Right-hand side of the screen is where the deck creation happens, is where all the magic occurs. All the event cards are located in this topmost stack. If you want to experiment with manual deck creation, you can do so. Have fun with that. The early epic cards are in this top stack, and late ones are in the bottom stack here. And these, I believe, are all set to auto shuffle. All of these 12 boxes are manual shuffle boxes, and the functionality of them is to facilitate the create deck buttons, the routines down here. So if I want to create the deck for the campaign, I'll press this button. It'll assemble the deck according to rules, and then all of the remaining buttons here will self-destruct. Any cards left in any of these boxes here will also self-destruct, so you will not know what cards are not included in the game. So let's go ahead and just create a deck. Count to 5, and if nothing's happened after you've counted to 5, then press the button again. But otherwise, it takes a few seconds for the routine to actually complete itself. So be patient with that. So here we go. We got 78 cards in the deck. There's a counter down here. This is the main deck that you'll be drawing cards off of, and you can drag and drop and do that manually to the upcoming slot, the current card slot, and then the discard card slot. Discard and deck will contain a countdown that will tell you how many cards are in those stacks, and the purpose for that is to help you be able to extrapolate approximately when you could expect an epic card. Just remember not to forget to count the cards that are over in the momentum side, that is the left-hand side of the board. If you have cards over here, don't forget to include that in your own mental calculations. I encourage users to use the toolbar buttons rather than manual drag and drop. It works smoother, and the functionality, the automation will work better if you use this all the time rather than manually doing things. But I have included, I believe, enough functionality for you to do it manually. I just know that when you use this, it works best. So if I click draw a card, it takes a card off the deck and sends it to upcoming. If there's already a card in upcoming and I click draw card again, it'll slide the card from upcoming to current, and it'll drag a card off of the deck to the upcoming. To discard a card, I can do it manually from current, or I can hit end card play, and that will send Arthur to the discard. It will delete any pawns, clear movement tracks, adjust eligibility. For example, let me position all these guys as ineligible, for example. And then what I'll do is I'll hit draw card. It just moved the card whose name I can neither read that nor pronounce it. So card 32 just moved over. And then if I hit end card play, it will discard the card whose name I cannot pronounce nor read, and it will then also adjust eligibility. So if there's any pawns in ineligible, it'll arrange them here. Anything in pass will also get arranged. Cards there, or pawns, excuse me, that were in any of these boxes will go over to the ineligible factions box. All that happens when you hit end card play. So use those toolbar buttons. I think that is probably going to work best. I'm going to cycle through a few of these because I want to get to a momentum card or a capability card, and I know there's a ton of them in here, so we'll just work through some. Once you've passed 8 cards seen, you can now have an epic card show up. So we are due for an epic card pretty soon. So I might as well just keep this up until we get an epic card. Okay, Rising Seas just appeared, so we'll end card play. Draw to send him over to current, and this is perfect because what just happened was an epic card was drawn. Now when an epic card is drawn, especially when you're using this functionality here, the module will automatically take the card that was sent, that was already in current, it'll move it back to upcoming, and then the epic card, it'll move to current, so it automatically will go to its slot. That's one of the reasons why I encourage you to do it this way. So end card play again, and then draw a card to move Rising Seas over. Now we have a card. We actually have 2 cards available now that have momentum and or continuous functionality, their capability. If you right click on these cards, it'll give you the option to do unshaded or shaded or no momentum. So let's say we wanted to do the unshaded, it'll do a control 1. It puts a marker up here, and I have modified the markers for Vassal. So momentum only have the little sails, and capability only have the yellow infinity marker on it. So if I hit the wrong thing, I just right click and choose, I want to do shaded capability. It'll change the marker. But maybe, I'm one of those players, I can't make up his mind what he's going to do. I could hit control 0 to clear out the momentum. Choosing all of that stuff, it doesn't change where the card is located. That's not going to move the card, but if I right click and choose to send to the momentum display at the left side of the screen, it will send the card over there, and I will zoom out, way out, so you can see. It just sent it over here, just randomly, just puts it right here, and then I can move this to where I think it will work best. I used to have these so that cards would snap to the grid. I've turned that feature off. I found that I think users might find that to be irritating. So, but there is a grid. That's why the reporting will show like grid locations. Cards that are located over here and are tagged with momentum, when you go to a reset phase and you hit this button here that says reset phase, it will get rid of those momentum cards. So I'll do that now. Well, actually, hold on. I will draw a card. And notice the draw card did not delete the Rising Seas. Any cards over here, they don't get discarded. Now this one here, let's say we're going to do an unshaded capability on him. And then we're going to send him over here as well. So now we got this card over here. We'll just put him right there. When it comes time to do a reset phase, if I hit this, what'll happen is there'll be a number of things. Let me just position some of these pawns so you can kind of see, get an idea how this works. When I go to reset phase, what will happen is it will reset all the pawns, and it'll get rid of any momentum cards here. It'll put them into the discard pile. But the capability cards will remain here. So that's the card functionality in the game. Also, if you have, let's say I've drawn a card here, and maybe I want to play Barbarian Conspiracy, which is one of the few cards in this game that I can read. What I can do is I can right click on it, and I can choose to, where is it? Play pivotal event. That's the one we want. We don't want to send it to the, this has capability on it, so there's send a capability functionality to it, but I want to play the event. So if I do that, I want you to pay attention to what will happen to these cards over here. So I'm going to select that, but then I'm going to zoom way in so on the video you can see better what happens here. we have card 30 and card 53, and everything should slide to the left when I do a Control P, and you can see that is in fact what happened. So pivotal event basically backs everything up and puts itself as current. From there on, it acts like a regular card, and this one, since it has capability, can be sent back to that display or discarded like any other event card. So that's how the cards work in the game. Let me talk a little bit about game pieces that are in available forces displays, and I will warn you, if you're paying attention in the video, you will see an error report that I'm still going to work on getting cleared out. I know why it's happening. It's a bit of work to get it to not report that. Available forces can be dragged manually, and there's a countdown that shows the number of pieces remaining for each type as you drag things away from that stack. The countdown timer, or the countdown thing here, will reflect that. So it's best to keep all your pieces and available forces in those stacks. You can drag them manually onto the map. Now, the module does not track control automatically. That's huge. Please remember that. It differs from all the other coin modules. There's no automation for tracking control. So please be aware of that. You'll have to do that manually. But again, if you're smart enough to play this game, you're smart enough to handle that by yourself. If you right-click on the population buttons, the population buttons are programmed to handle a bit of rules enforcement. They can go all the way down to 0, and they can be elevated to a number equal to their original setting plus 1. So Noventi, that particular region, I can increase the population up to 2, but it will not go beyond that. In fact, if I right-click on this, you'll see that the option to increase population is removed. I can choose to decrease the population down, and then you see both options reappear. So to use this button to its full potential, right-click on it and you'll see all the different things you can do and the shortcut key combinations associated with it. You can place white pawns, you can place gray pawns, and you can also dispatch pieces from available forces, provided that those forces are indeed available. There is a measure of rule enforcement there. You'll notice that the comitatis are not available. That should be a control 3. The reason for that is right now there are no comitatis in available forces. They're all in the not yet in play. To put them in play, I either drag them to this box manually, or I can just take them out of here, right-click it on it, and do a control R. Or just, if you want to avoid the right-click, just do it a control R, and it'll send it here. So we got 3 comitatis available. So now when I come back to Nomanti, right-click on it, you'll see there is an option to dispatch a comitatis here. If you go to the settlements in available forces, they are not selectable. All of this is basically a graphic illusion. There's no pieces there at all. What really is happening is pieces can be generated by right-clicking on the settlement sites on the board. That's the only way you can place these. And so if I want to place a fort here, I can do so. Maybe I want to put a hill fort up here. And maybe I want to put a town here because there's a capability in play that allows me to do that. And again, there's not a rule enforcement on whether you can place towns in the hill fort sites, because there are events that can change the flow of the game, and that's quite a bit more work to program all that stuff in, and I just don't have the time to invest in that. Again, this is a game that is fairly complicated, and I think that we can handle such decisions manually without relying on the computer too much. All right, the game pieces, you'll notice that they do stack together. That's a little bit different than my other coin modules. There may be some modules where they stack. I don't really like that, but in this game, it proves to be a necessity. To separate stacks, just double click on it. They will disengage slightly, and you can drag them apart. When you place cubes, say they're taking refuge in the fort here, the graphics will look as though, you know, they don't snap together. They're on different layers, so they won't stick together. If you want to clear the movement trails, you can just use this button on the toolbar to do that. Also, the end faction and end card play buttons will also clear movement trails. But you can see how it looks when you see it. I'm showing that they're taking refuge in that fort, and it looks nice to do it in that fashion. So if I want to choose to end faction play, if I hit this button on the toolbar, it'll clear the movement trails, it'll clear the pawns out, and it does not adjust eligibility, it just ends that particular faction's play. I think that's about all there is to say about these buttons here. The control buttons, let me move the cubes over here a little bit. The control buttons, if you right click on these, you can adjust control from uncontrolled, Scotty, Saxon, Dukes, and Britain, all by right click function. So, you know, it's really not a difficult thing to do. There you go, you can show Duke's control. The reason I didn't do the automation there is the control rules are a little bit more complex, and it's just really a tricky thing. And I felt like it's an awful lot more work for not a whole lot of bell and whistle there. So you'll have to do that yourselves. This is the big bugaboo, the plunder or prosperity cubes. I really wanted to automate this, and I saw a number of ways to do it. The bottom line is it's just not practicable without investing a lot of time. These cubes can be arranged, especially in spaces where there's going to be 4, maybe 6 cubes, up to 8 cubes in a couple spaces. They can appear in such different ways, and when they get placed back on, it can look so different based on different circumstances. There was a lot of variables being thrown at me there, and I just found myself very, very frustrated with it and wasting a lot of time. I wasted a lot of time trying to automate that. Finally, I decided, let's just do it manual, so there's no automation with tracking, plunder, and any of that. The cubes do stack nicely on top of one another, so let's bring in some raiders here real quick. So if you got raiders in a place, you know, it'll look nice on top of them. To get rid of those cubes, what you can do is you can right click on the stack and just choose to delete, and that's not going to impact the underlying game piece. You cannot delete the cubes or the wedges or any of that, so don't be afraid that that's going to happen. I should also point out that we have one fort on the map, and so it will reflect up here graphically when you do dispatch these to the sites. I forgot to show that. If you run on a cube, if you want to put a cube back over here, you can double click to disengage, slide it over, and then if you do like a control C on it, you can clone these things. If you run out of them and you've run out of all of them on the map, well, first of all, you should probably resign if you're Britain, but you can go into the pieces, this tray here, and you can drag these manually onto the map to recreate them. You can also manually drag pawns onto the map from there. So that's another way that you can put those pieces on. All right, let's get this Saxon out of here. We'll return him back to where he came from. Let's put some Scotty on here. I'll put out maybe 3. No, let's just do 2 warbands. I'll put him back. Let's go send these guys back, send him back, and let's put a Scotty settlement here. One of the things that you'll probably look for is federati markers. There are no federati markers in the game. How this works is if you right click on the Scotty or Saxon pieces, there'll be an opportunity to put either blue or red federati marker on them. So let's go ahead and make this Britain control, and we'll make this a Britain federati. So you can see how nicely that looks. Same thing with the settlement. Right click on it and choose the blue federati. Alrighty, and to get rid of those things, you just remove the federati from it. Make sure you do that before you send it back to available forces. Check that. I think I can automate that so that when you do a control R, it'll get rid of any federati marker. Don't have to worry about that so much with the settlements, because these things basically just get generated. So if you do return Scotty settlement and then just do a new Scotty settlement, it's going to be fine. So, but yeah, that's how that works. So same thing with the Saxons. So if we have a Saxon down over here, and we got some Saxon warbands, there are going to be 3 of them. Let's make these guys red federati. Whoops. Wrong one. Like those red Federati. I think that's a Control D. There we go. They're all red Federati. So remember, Control R sends these guys back. You don't want to do that. It's a Control D. It stands for Dukes. Clear the movement. There you go. There's your Federati. So that's how Federati markers work in the game. So Control X, R, we'll send all these back. There we go. The roads marker does not move. Just right click on it to flip it. Boom. There you go. Same thing with the oceans. They don't move. Just flip them. They're stuck in place. A couple more things of automation and we'll wrap this up. We're just about done here. The Imperium track. Moving these things around, it'll report, but it's not going to do anything special until you move a marker. Say I move from Roman rule down to autonomy. What'll happen when I do that is it will move, or at least it's supposed to move these things around. All right, back to the drawing board on that. It's supposed to move those things around automatically, but clearly it doesn't, so we'll have to figure out why. If you need to random or manually adjust the victory pawns, right click on them and choose set to autonomy, and it'll move the red cube or the red pawn over to the autonomy victory spot, and then you can do that manually for the blue. I had that working the other day, and now I'm doing a video and it's not working, and that's kind of irritating, but what can you do? I'll have to double check and find out why that broke down. And then there you go. Yeah, this was working the other day, but now it's not. So, but I also put in a safeguard, so if any of the automation breaks down, you can just manually click on those things. I made them so they're not movable, so you don't accidentally drag these things around, and they will appear below the bottom of the stacks. All right, I think that's about it. Last thing I think I should cover is up here the buttons on the toolbar I haven't discussed. These buttons up here is how you can increase your resources. So you'll notice the resource pawn here for the Dukes. If I hit the plus button, it starts moving that up, and it also puts a number superimposed on it. Your physical game won't do that, but it makes it handy to be able to quickly at a glance read and see how many resources you have. So those buttons that in my other modules, they're in the available forces boxes, I found a way to put them on the toolbar now. So, and they're color coded, and if you're colorblind, just hover the mouse over the button and it'll tell you what the button does. Most of those should be self-explanatory. So plus means it goes up and minus means it goes down. I don't know what else there is to say about that. Tracking Britain controls done manually, so you're going to have to move that around manually. Same thing with Scotty control, Duke's control. Any of those victory markers that are manual or deal with control, they're going to be manual. And none of these markers stack, so just separate them a little bit so you can see what those markers are. There are some round plus and minus buttons over here. I'll show you what those do. These are for the prosperity. So as cubes disappear due to rage, you just move that down, and it'll automatically also move the prosperity plus prestige marker as well. If I hit a plus button here and increase prestige, it will move the prestige button up, and so you'll see I have 1 prestige now for the Dukes, and so these markers have separated. If I get a second prestige, they'll separate wider, but oh, we lost some prosperity, so now both of them slide down. Bottom line is you can do this manually, or you can use these buttons to streamline and move those things around very quickly on the map. So I think that is just about it. Again, refugee markers are located down here in the not yet in play. I found that that's probably the best place to put them, and you have the rule enforcement of their limitation in number. There are only 4 of them in here, and so to make them available, just drag them over manually. There's no real automation with these things. If you right click on them, it's not even going to do anything. There's really nothing for it to do, so just manually drag those guys around. And I think that is just about it. So I'll be doing the setups here once I fix a couple more bugs. I got to fix that Imperium marker, and there's an error that's reporting when you right click on these things for the first time that I want to clear out. And once that's done, this will be usable. I'm Joel Toppin. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, hope you enjoy the module. Sorry it took so long. I didn't get it brought on board officially to do this module until early this summer, and summertime has been pretty busy, so I haven't had as much time to dedicate to it. But I have been making progress on it, and it's hopefully going to be ready for mass use here real soon.